What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Shoot the Gap, the IDP podcast for fantasyandframes.com, part of the Fantasy and Frames podcast network. I am your host, Nate Markham. With me, as always, are two of my favorite IDP minds in the business, Mike Wohlert, Jorge Edwards. Fellas, how we doing? Mike, start with you.
Oh, not too bad. Always nice to have one of those unexpected 3-day weekends. So I had Monday off and then just cruising through the week.
Nice. Jorge, yourself?
Doing all right. I had an epiphany though this past weekend.
Oh, you did you?
I did. I'm a very big craft. I should say now, a very big craft beer consumer drinker.
Yeah.
I loved my Sam Adams and any other type of ale or lager, and something inside me just switched, it's like a switch just turned off inside me, or on, depending on how you look at it. And I find none of those beers delicious anymore. There's only one type of beer that I like. You know what that is? Budweiser.
Look at you.
You'll appreciate this because you're out of St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
I find just a regular Budweiser 10 times more refreshing than a craft beer now. What the hell? I know. Blew my mind.
I will tell. I'm not a Budweiser fan. Really not.
Really?
Yeah, not a fan.
Your taste buds are regressing in your old age.
They are. I know, it's crazy.
I've burned them out with from hops and whiskey and everything else. I don't hate it. I don't go for a Budweiser. Now, a Budweiser on draft for me is better than a can or a bottle.
Of course. Yeah.
Is that how we all rank? Does it go draft, bottle, can, or in that order? Can
draft.
last?
Well, it depends on the can.
We're talking
Guinness would be can over bottle.
Oh yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, I guess wholesale as we're talking, but yeah.
Draft for me is.
Oh, and also today is Happy Austin 316 Day for those who celebrate it.
Yes.
Today is the King of the Ring anniversary of 316. Says I just whipped your ass.
That's right.
It is a big anniversary. I wish I had somebody throwing me beers right now. I would catch them, mash all of it, and drink 1 ounce out of it. But he did that 35 times, and that equals a pretty good haul right there. But so guys, on the docket this week, we have now covered every position rankings. We have talked about just overall IDP, more of the players. Let's dig a little bit deeper this week, because one of the areas that's always important to know is understanding scheme changes. On the offensive side of the ball, if a new offensive coordinator came in and i.e. like say a Kevin Stefanski, and all of a sudden you go from a pass heavy attack to a run heavy attack. And I know that's not the case in that situation, Mike. I'm using as an analogy, I guess, a bad one, but an analogy nonetheless. That would be headlines among regular fantasy leagues. And within IDP, I feel like that's kind of just not as talked about enough. Now, of course, today, our friend John Macri over at PFF put out some of his information regarding some scheme changes. And I thought that was happenstance that we're talking about tonight, and coincidental and good timing. But we're going to take a look at, there were 12 different teams that had a new defensive coordinator, switching change from defensive coordinator, play calling, et cetera. And I figured we'd take it a little bit and go kind of around the league and discuss what these changes, if there are any, might mean, and who may be the biggest beneficiary, who might take some of the biggest hits, et cetera. And so I broke it up. Hollywood, by the way, our dear friend Hollywood Titan, can't make it with us yet. If he pops in, he obviously will take over. But in the time being, I will cover some of these teams. And they are the Baltimore Ravens, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Vegas Raiders, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bears, the Colts, the Saints, the Seahawks, the Broncos, the Houston Texans, the Giants, and the Steelers. Mike, let's start in Baltimore, where new defensive coordinator Mike McDonald takes over for longtime defensive coordinator Wink Martindale. What do you see happening in Baltimore this year?
So in terms of a scheme and philosophy, Mike McDonald was actually a defensive coach between 2014 and 2020. went to Michigan, was the beneficiary of being able to coach Aiden Hutchinson. But I think the basic principles of Baltimore's defense is probably going to remain intact, at least with John Harbaugh there. And I think Mike McDonald, even though he's going to want to put a little bit of his stamp, I'm expecting the foundation and even the first floor to stay intact. So I still think they're going to be a flexible front. They're going to be aggressive. So I definitely see an aggressive nature, kind of a return to blitz heavy, aggressive, getting to the quarterback, return to Baltimore defense. So that's kind of how I see. I mean, Baltimore has always been a very creative defense. Always used, multi-fronts, flexible fronts. They've always used 1 to 2 linebackers, have used the extra DB, but that's kind of how I see Baltimore's defense this season.
Yeah. And, ironic enough, obviously McDonald goes from Harbaugh to Harbaugh. So he has the little, which was also the reason why he was hired in, is obviously the word of mouth. But one of the players who I was going to say, you think Jason or Odafe Owa might actually see an improvement? Because the one thing that McDonald did last year that I thought was kind of underrated, at least in terms of scheme or at least player evaluation, is he noticed that Aiden Hutchinson is much better when he's actually not an interior line. Like, he went from really a down lineman to a stand-up defensive end. He mentioned going into Baltimore, he wants to make the most of the players, build the player strengths. And so I'm wondering if we might see a little more of a progression from Jason Owa.
Yeah, I think he's the type of guy who will play to the strength of the player and not fit the scheme to the player, if I'm saying that correctly.
That makes sense.
Okay. So there's no reason to put OA inside or do anything crazy or drop him into coverage, really. I mean, he had 421 pass rush snaps as a rookie, had almost a 12% pass rush rate, pressure rate. Yeah. I want to see some of his hits turn to sacks, so I'm hoping there's some development there. Maybe just a quick change into movement, or maybe with his hands. Tyce Bowser is still there, so he enjoyed his best season last year, 40 pressures, 7 sacks. So I think those two, Bowser and Owe, are going to complement each other, I think, very well. I think someone like Calais Campbell, I mean, he's going to be more of a space gap filler. I'm not seeing too much in anything here. Not much else on the defensive line or the edge, but I definitely like Owe and his potential in this defense. So I think they're going to play to his strengths. And like I said, I think they're just going to continue to coach him up. If I recall correctly, I thought Owe was one of the guys that went to the Miller pass rush camp, and if he didn't, I apologize. I thought I saw that name there, but if he did,
right.
If he did, then that's, again, a huge benefit to learn from someone like Von Miller.
Yeah. Jorge, is Chuck Clark still going to be garbage?
Chuck Clark is going to get the participation ribbon again this year. He's not going anywhere. He's still going to be there. Is he going to be garbage? I don't know.
No, I was just kidding. We were just beforehand when Mike was the three of us were talking about him. He's not garbage. He's just not. He's just a guy, as Mike was saying.
Yeah, Marcus Williams, I think, is an intriguing player in big play scoring. 59% career play on ball rate when targeted. So 60% of the time he's making a play on the ball, whether it's a defended pass or an interception. I still like Patrick Queen. Baltimore still runs mostly 1 to 2 linebacker sets. He had a good start of 21. Just didn't have some of that aggressiveness, but I think someone like Zachary Orr, I'm hoping will help him out, the new linebacker coach. So Queen just still inconsistent in coverage. Showed some flashes, but which was still inconsistent. I think the coverage improvement is going to be definitely something to watch. But I think hopefully Orr can kind of clean up his tackles and so they can cut down on those misses.
Yeah, because I know that's what Jorge was going to say. He's going to talk about his near 13% missed tackle rate and the loss of some subsequent snaps as a result. But I won't give you the floor, Jorge, to bash Patrick Queen, because we need to talk about a different team, and we're not on a time crunch. But I know that could turn into a 20-minute diatribe, and I'll let you beat up on Kevin Byard. Continuation from last week to really make Hollywood mad when he gets back. But let's start first. Let's, one of the other areas, one of the bigger ones is that I noticed was the Chicago Bears defensive scheme as a whole. Wholesale changes across the board. They bring in Matt Eberflus. Along with that comes Alan Williams. Gone is Sean Desai. It's a conversion back realistically to a 4-3. Of the teams that we talked about, this is probably the one that's going to have the most significant scheme change. And with that, I have a couple questions that maybe you guys can answer. And I think I know the answer. Early on, there was a question about how Roquan would be utilized in this defense, because one thing that we've learned is that, really more of an Eberflus, but then as a continuation through Alan Williams, the weak side linebacker has been his predominant role that he wants his most gifted linebacker in, a la Darius Leonard. And this was before Nicholas Morrow came over. And there were people within the Chicago, room saying, is there a chance that Roquan moves to the weak side? Looks like he's staying in the middle. Do we think that Nicholas Morrow might be underrated, considering he's going to be thrust into a position that has been highly utilized over the years as far as weak side linebacker? Jorge, what do you think?
Just look what, wow, I had to catch myself there for a second. I was about to say, well, look what Darius Leonard did in Indianapolis. That's surely going to translate over. No, that's not the case.
Fair.
But it is interesting, the roles that are these two players are going to be sharing, the similarity in the coaching scheme and the opportunity. Is he undervalued? If he's undervalued, is he somebody that could do something? I don't know, to be honest with you. I do want to say though, if there's anybody that could take advantage of the opportunity and the scheme that he's in, I think it is Nicholas Morrow. He played pretty well when he was with the Raiders. Good tackle to solo assist ratio there for IDP. Mm-hmm. He certainly has the makings of it, but it's hard for me to imagine. You have Roquan Smith, who has good sideline speed. That was his big thing when he was coming out of Georgia. That's what he's been all over the NFL when he's been in the pros. It's hard for me to imagine that they just take him out of that role altogether and just permanently just keep him in the middle.
Which is what I think. I think that there was talk. That linebacking room, Mike, I don't even have to pull it up to tell you. Outside of Roquan and Morrow, it's not good. Caleb Johnson, Noah Dawkins, really, that's about as deep as it gets. Unless you want to talk about some of the rookies that are the people they brought in free.
No love for Matthew Adams. Come on, man.
He's got to be strong side. I don't think he can even play in the middle. But you're right. No love for Matthew Adams. Mike, I tell you who I'm having when I look at this and I see situation is that they in this role. This is an Eddie Jackson staying deep the entire time. Jaquan Brisker definitely moving up in the box. We mentioned him a little bit when we talked about our rookies, and then we talked again about some safeties. The Colts never ranked higher than 27th in blitz percentage, but they also had a general, consensus to bring a safety up in the box pretty consistently. Do we think that might be Jaquan Brisker even taking that next step, or maybe we're undervaluing him a little bit? Could he have early returns IDP wise?
Yeah, Brisker's the only safety I'm targeting. I think they're just going to let Eddie Jackson play deep. I think that's what they're going to let him focus on. I think just the one thing to watch is weak side middle. I don't know if that really matters, because when you look at some of the snap breakdowns, Roquan was more left inside, right inside, and I think that second linebacker again is going to still be on the left side, but still could be more inside as opposed to playing outside. So I think that's just something to watch. Again, with something with a defense like that, you're just looking for the snaps, and if Morrow gets the snaps that you want. But in terms of defensive back, really I'm targeting Brisker. I really like Brisker. And then outside of that, nah.
I mean, I don't care what anybody says. I don't have high hopes for the Bears this year. I took a bet with a friend a couple weeks back. He thinks they're going to win 4 division games, and I took the under pretty quickly. And I don't know if they're going to win 5 games on the season. Now, maybe that's blasphemy to some of our Bears fans out there. No offense, but I think that the defense will be on the field enough that. Brisker's the guy who I see make the most impact as far as from this conversion, if we want to call it that, to a 4-3, because truly, as we've said, guys, no one's really playing a 3-4. No one's really playing a 4-3. Everybody's playing here's a base set a couple times. Here's a nickel. Here's a 3-2-5, a 2-2. Starting to sound like basketball formations. I'm starting to get them confused with the 2-2-1, boxing one. I was like, what is happening right now? Yeah, Jorge's, if you're listening, Jorge's calling out. He's either doing sign language to tell me to move on to Denver, or he's calling play.
No, like this is what the point guard does. They call out the alignments with like the 1 to 2 or whatever. It's never
like
mind.
Your Celtics did when they lost to the.
So I'm going to ignore that and just bring up I'm wearing.
If you have the ability to boot
championship,
Nate, do so. You can boot Nate.
I was rooting for the Celtics. Jorge knows that. Jason Tatum is from St. Louis. His my automotive group provides his dad with cars and for his coaching and everything for a lot of his trips and all. So we've had the pleasure of playing a couple golf tournaments with Jason and his dad, and so I was rooting for the Celtics. I probably am not going to root for the Denver Broncos this year because, number one, they're in the West, of course, against my Chiefs. But if I'm going to be rooting for something, and I have to have your help because I've now seen this pronounced 2 different ways. They brought wholesale changes across the board. Notice that a lot. Nathaniel Hackett, the new head coach, Ed Donatell's out at defensive coordinator, and Ajero Avero or Ajiro Avero. I've seen it pronounced and spelled out. Actually, 2 different articles, 2 different ways. I will have to get clarity. I apologize. I've seen it both. Jorge, do you know the pronunciation of that better than I? Did you do the research to figure it out?
No.
What's a no?
No, I did not.
Did you do any research?
I did some research, not on Ejiro Evero's pronunciation of his first name, but I'm going to go with Ejiro.
I like it. Let's get. So what's Ejiro going to bring to this Denver defense?
That's a great question. I wish I was assigned Denver. But look, what do you call it? The rookie, I think Nick Benito is somebody that we need to pay attention to this year. One of the things we were talking about post-draft was, Bradley Chubb. How long is Bradley Chubb going to be the guy there in Denver in terms of pass rushing situation? Is Nick Benito potentially somebody that could step in terms of production as a rookie? Maybe not. Maybe not. Obviously not to start the season, but somebody that you could potentially see if Chubb gets hurt. Chubb has a history of getting hurt a lot, so whether or not he finishes the whole season will be a miracle this year. So, in terms of anybody else, I mean, Alex Singleton's coming over there from Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. I think we can all say with assurances that we're not really high on Alex Singleton, although he does get the tackle volume despite the fact that he's an inefficient tackler. Mm-hmm. They bring over Randy Gregory, shoring up that pass rush. Maybe who knows? Maybe Randy Gregory helps to free up Bradley Chubb more. I don't know. It's certainly a possibility. Kareem Jackson, strong safety. I will always have feelings for Kareem Jackson. Ever since he was in Houston, he was one of the first strong safeties to really play that cover corner / high tackle volume cornerback / strong safety role. Really made him really viable in IDP. He goes over to Denver in free agency a few years ago. And, obviously he's on the downtrend of his career. He got brought back this year. I think his best days are behind him. You have Justin Simmons there. He's, your stalwart free safety and coverage. He has his tackle upside, but he mostly likes to make plays in coverage, like I was just saying. So there are a lot of interesting moving pieces here. Pat Surtain, though, and I know cornerback is a situation for IDP that we kind of frown upon because it's kind of hard to predict production when it comes to quarterbacks. But this kid played lights out as a rookie. So I'm curious to see, just from a real football perspective, what he does. But for IDP purposes, probably not somebody that I'm targeting.
Gotcha. Now, for total transparency, I went back and looked at the show sheet. I did at least get it right. It does. You did have Denver. That were the Denver, Houston, the Giants, and Pittsburgh. Just want to make sure that I didn't screw up and do something wrong. You handled that. For anybody listening, to get thrown hey, here's a scheme change for a team wholesale, and what do you think is going to happen, to not have any preparation and do it as well, you handled that very admirably. That was an excellent, because that's hard. I don't care what it is. Everybody wants this, we're just shooting the shit, talking some IDP and just going. But this isn't exactly like, this is more challenging, say, than it would be for Superman to beat the hell out of Batman. That would be clearly easy. And
that's horrible. How dare you?
How dare I?
It's not how dare you, Sean. Yeah, you're right. As I'm looking right now, yep, I see Denver, the very first team. So my bad.
Okay.
My bad.
You handled it wonderful. You actually touched on the one thing that I think Nick Benito could see an increased role this year. Maybe not necessarily just because of Arrow, but also Randy Gregory's already banged up. Mike, have you ever put Randy Gregory and banged up in the same sentence together?
Toked up
goes together like peanut butter and jelly.
Yes, it does. Peanut butter.
So the pronunciation, I looked it up, guys. It's Ejiro.
Evero.
Evero.
Ejiro. Evero.
Which is weird because I would never have said that. I would have said a hero of Arrow, and I thought that sounds cool. I'm gonna go with it because the J you think would be silent, right? Almost always silent.
Sure.
I'm asking the wrong person. You didn't do any research on Denver.
Nope. So yep.
That's okay. You got it right. Little fun fact. Avero actually coached under Vic Fangio in 2014 with the San Francisco 49ers. So another coach from the Vic Fangio tree of coaching. There you go. Fun fact of the day. Or, well, one of probably 50, because that's all I got are a bunch of fun facts to add to you guys' dynamite conversation. Thank God I did, because Jacksonville is next on the docket. Mike, new head coach, Doug Peterson. Thank God. If there's a team that needed some changes, it obviously is Jacksonville. Mike Caldwell comes over, as linebackers coach from Tampa Bay, replacing Joe Cullen. How's Jacksonville looking? What are we thinking?
So Caldwell, first-time coordinator, but I think he's going to bring over his philosophy from Tampa that Ball's used. So the Bucs had more than 3,000 pass rush snaps. Mm-hmm. So pretty much everyone at one time could be sent into the QB. So I see something very similar to that, bringing that philosophy over. I still don't understand why they drafted Trayvon Walker, but I don't see Caldwell doing a major overhaul. I think it's still going to remain a base 34, but I still think, again, different fronts, different coverages, very similar to Tampa with blitzes. So I think you're definitely going to see a really nice season from Josh Allen. I think you could see Devin Lloyd be almost used as in the Devin White role. So I think he's just going to be used all over, use his talents all over the field. So I think you're going to see him going after the quarterback. I think you're going to see him in coverage. So Fosade Aluokon, he's going to be there. I don't think he doesn't do a whole lot of things very well. I think he's just there. I think along with Christian Kirk, I think they just needed to overpay for all of these free agents to come to Jacksonville. So, but I like I definitely like Devin Lloyd in this defense. Doesn't have, unfortunately, they don't have a good safety group in Jacksonville. So unfortunately is not able to bring along Antoine Winfield along. So really right now the safeties are a bit of a mess. Andre Sisco's a little bit intriguing after his ACL injury. That's probably the guy I might look at. If he plays a deep role, I might be out, but Cisco is probably the one I'm looking at right now. But in terms of your IDP targets, I think it's going to be Josh Allen, it's going to be Alua Khan, it's going to be Devin Lloyd, and I think kind of whoever wins that, I guess you could say that safety box roll. But really, they didn't. Caldwell and Bowles didn't really have a true. They used kind of everybody all over the field, so I don't think I would necessarily target any of the Jacksonville safeties. I did read a few weeks ago Landon Collins is of intrigue to Jacksonville. If that were to happen, I'd want Landon Collins if he landed in Jacksonville, because I think he would be used a little properly. But yeah, I think that's going to be again kind of a very pass rush heavy defense. Yeah, I think it's still they're gonna see a lot of snaps.
Yeah, and the one thing that I noticed too is that they with these influences, as he mentioned, this is Mike Caldwell, and the Todd Bowles, the Jim Johnsons, the John Harbaugh like influences, more zone coverage than what Jacksonville ran last year, which, as I was talking earlier about John Macri and the zone coverage and what that means for linebacker tackle efficiencies. Again, I feel like Devin Lloyd is getting bumped up a little bit. I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah and Lance Zierlein talk about Chad Muma, and they're really high on Chad Muma playing his way into more snaps this year. I don't know where they're going to come from. I don't think it's going to be it might just be more nickel sets where he tries to come in and they just try to, because he definitely has good coverage skills. So, I don't think I can recommend Muma. Obviously in dynasty formats, we've talked about him already once, but as Sean said, Rayshon Jenkins, he did have some solid games last year.
Probably like a best ball target, because way too inconsistent from week to week. Tackle rate, I think below 9%. 73 tackles over 838 snaps. So
yeah, exactly.
Best ball target if you're playing in that type of a format this season, but not someone that I'd feel comfortable plugging in in a seasonal league on a week to week basis.
Yeah, he really. I thought going into 21 from the Chargers, coming off close to 80 tackles, I thought maybe that might be someone to target, but. We've seen inconsistency over the years from him. He had a near 20% missed tackle rate in 2019. Not that isn't fixable and that it's not correctable, but yeah, Rayshon Jenkins was a name that I even mentioned him in a couple different waiver wire articles because he did show some flashes. But it was Andrew Wingard, I believe, was another one whose name was mentioned that we were like, okay, maybe Jacksonville has something. But again, like I said, I think Josh Allen, I agree with you. Josh Allen, definitely something. Devin Lloyd there. They have to improve. They were 20th in total defense last year, 17th against the pass, 24th against the run, 28th in total points allowed, and last in turnovers. So Jacksonville definitely going to look to make some changes. I can tell you another AFC South team and the Indianapolis Colts. They bring in Gus Bradley, replacing Matt Eberflus. Eberflus. I keep saying ever, but whatever. We're not getting. There's no point. Yeah, it's close enough. And honestly,
I always pronounce his name like even flow, like Eberflus. So
now I got the song in my
exactly.
Head.
You're welcome.
I wish I was talented to sing, and I wish I could go into like the 4 things that I have written down, which is not much. Number 1 literally is not much will change. They're not going to change a ton from what that was. But, if there's an area that we think that could have improved, talk about shit situation now that sucks even more. Happy for the guy is Kari Willis. Of course, he's doing, wonderful, wonderful things. But here's a guy who basically was, leading the Legion of Boom. I mean, this is an opportunity for this secondary group to become even more dynamic, and maybe it will. Maybe we'll see Nick Cross and we'll take that net, as a rookie and maybe evolve a little bit more. But granted, that was a while ago. We know that, but still, not much is going to change. He does have connection with DeForest Buckner from the time with San Francisco. He who was coached by Robert Saleh, with Bradley in San Francisco. So again, nothing's changing with DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner is DeForest Buckner. We're not seeing any improved change. He's not going to be moved outside or anything crazy asinine like that. But there's one area that has long been key for Gus Bradley's defenses, and that is the Leo, the left end outside, if you want to call it that. And for years, if you look what last year, Max Crosby, who was the Leo last year, and really saw, now it's a lot to do with Max Crosby being Max Crosby, but being in a position to succeed. And that takes me to Kwity Paye, who I've been a fan of, really since he came into the league. And I think this could be Kwity Paye's welcoming party. Not that he needs it, but I think the average fan has paid down just enough. I think this might be that opportunity that we see. The one concern, if there's any from linebacking group, is that the Raiders blitzed the fewest times in the NFL last year. Maybe he incorporates that this year. He's went on record as saying that he doesn't care about blitzing is only to keep the offense off pace and off balance. And if used properly, it's not a benefit of volume. It's a benefit of value and when you go in and when you set that blitz. So not a ton of changes. Obviously, I think that, like I said, I think Kwity Paye is the one person whose name, if anybody, I'm going to move up just a little bit from the influence of Gus Bradley.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Yannick Ngakoue being there, do you think his, we're used to him getting the sack totals year in and year out. Do you think that there's any bump up? Like there's a rationale that you could say you could bump him up your rankings, or is he kind of like somebody that's just that consistent person that's always where he's at? You can count those sack totals, but that's pretty much what you're counting on. And there's not any advantageous scenario here.
I mean, there's an the advantage is named DeForest Buckner and maybe Kwity Paye, where maybe Ngakoue sees less double teams and he's strictly in a one-on-one. And if you can assume that he still has the ability to win the edge, which he does, he's just, I think right there. Exactly. Sean beat me to it. It's definitely sack or bust. And again, Mike's alluded to best ball, and that's another potential, maybe a best ball. If the Colts can get ahead and they can pin his ears back and he can just straight rush. Yes. And I think the system and situation is decent for him, but again, I think he's he'll probably be your defensive end or DL 4 or 5. So I mean, you're not asking for much production if you're gonna roster him. Jorge, you have Houston.
Yes.
Are you prepared for Houston?
Yes, I am prepared.
The good news is,
okay.
Houston, you tell us what you got, because I gotta tell you, I didn't see much change.
There isn't much change, actually. Lovie Smith is still going to be coaching the defense here in 2022 as he did in 2021. And I don't know if you heard this, but he used to coach with Tony Dungy in Tampa, and he likes to use this defense called the Tampa 2, which is a variation of the cover 2 defense. I don't know if that's something that's brand new, the brand new concept that you all are hearing for the first time. However, for those who do not understand the concept of the Tampa 2, it's basically a defense in which the most important football player on the field is the middle linebacker. This, traits of a middle linebacker in a Tampa 2 defense, they're not these big hulking players that just go and I go stuff run and I go tackle. No, these linebackers are super athletic. They are really good, really smart in terms of being able to diagnose whether it's a run play, whether it's a pass play. And at a moment's notice, they know they could have to drop in coverage and go back there with the 2 safeties and kind of like divide the back end in thirds. So when you're thinking about linebackers here, for IDP purposes, Christian Kirksey, like it or not, he was the starting linebacker last year at middle. He is currently slated to be the starting middle linebacker. Ironically, though, a player that I used to be pretty high on when he was with the Jets, Neville Hewitt, graded out as a better coverage linebacker than Christian Kirksey, which you would think would help in those situations where the middle linebacker has to drop back in coverage. However, that's not the case. Christian Kirksey is your linebacker, whether you like it or not. There's been a lot of talk, though. Christian Harris, the rookie coming in from Alabama. I got news for you. He didn't really grade out as somebody who's a great coverage linebacker either. So it's kind of interesting what you got going on there at the middle linebacking spot. Maybe over time, Christian Harris is able to develop and get those skills and get those traits going that he can eventually supplant Christian Kirksey. But that's, he's your guy at middle linebacker. What is really interesting about the Tampa 2, though, is they really utilize the middle linebacker for kind of keeping all the big plays gone or non-existent and giving you the short to intermediate parts of the field to work with. And that's right up Eric Murray's alley, the strong safety there for Houston. I think he has there is definitely some benefit with this scheme with him in that position. Now, he did recently have surgery this offseason, but all reports are saying that he should be good to go come training camp. But a player that I'm super excited about, that I think all of us are excited about, we talked about him when we were doing our post-draft analysis, Jalen Petrie, free safety. One of the hallmarks of the Tampa 2 defense is rushing, blitzing the quarterback from the free safety position. This guy can really, if put in the right position, can light it up in the backfield. Somebody that I'm definitely stashing in my rookie draft if I've not had that done already. And definitely somebody that could definitely get you some good wins here and there during the season.
Nice. And I know that there will be plenty of fantasy team names with Peachtree Dish or Petri Dish of some sort if they want to come do the Peachtree comparisons and current events, of course. But we shall see. We shall see. And yes, Houston was the land for the hyphenated last names. The law office of everybody was they were open for business because Houston definitely wasn't good. Houston will be a little bit better offensively, but I don't think we're going to see this amazing team. But I'll tell you who might be amazing. Again, there's a trend and the theme, if you haven't noticed, is pretty much the entire AFC West has went through wholesale changes except for the Chiefs, and the Vegas Raiders are no different. Josh McDaniels is a new head coach, which I've seen firsthand was not successful in St. Louis, but whatever. Hey, that was 15 years ago, so maybe he's going to do better. Gus Bradley is gone, the aforementioned Gus Bradley, and in is Patrick Graham from the Giants. Mike, what are we thinking?
Yeah, Graham should be interesting. Graham, has familiarity with McDaniels. They were there in New England, so he has had some exposure to Coach Bill, attention to detail, and some of the game planning. It is quite remarkable that a lot of the coaches from the Belichick tree have not really panned out. So this will be interesting to see how Graham does and how McDaniels do outside of New England. I think I'm expecting a little bit different of a defense. I think Graham is going to use some of those odd fronts that he used in New York. I think he's going to be deploying more maybe big nickel one linebacker packages, just kind of basing on what he did with New York. And then I think that's why I'm buying into Diablo over Denzel Perriman, because I think Diablo gets that full-time role. He asks his safeties to play all over, so I think Xavier McKinney could be, I'm hoping, the Jonathan Abram of the defense. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to be asked to play. Hopefully, will be playing both slot and deep. I think his strength is that slot box role, so I'm kind of hoping he recognizes that and plays that. So Graham is lucky, gets Max Crosby, so probably going to be an even better version of Leonard Williams. He also gets Chandler Jones, so another really solid veteran edge rusher. But yeah, Denzel Perriman is someone I'm completely fading him this season. I think he's a good run defender, but he leaves a little bit to desire to be. He lives a little bit to be desired in coverage, and I think he needs somebody that's going to be that'll be able to do a little bit more. That can do more coverage. And Diablo's a safety, kind of can play coverage, can do a little bit more. So I don't know. I don't see Perriman being as efficient or playing as many snaps this season as. And I messed up as I heard myself think. I think Jonathan Abram is going to be the Xavier McKinney. That's what I meant to say. I just caught myself. Did I? Okay,
yeah, you did.
I didn't know if I flipped it, but Trevor Morrig is more as the deep safety, so I'm just not seeing much IDP production out of him. So as far as your targets, you got Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, big play scoring, especially if you have an edge or defensive line designation. Mm-hmm. Diablo and Abram are going to be really my targets out of the Vegas defense. But yeah. I do think it's going to be more kind of what you saw in New York, pretty aggressive, odd fronts, big nickel, one linebacker packages, one linebacker sets.
Yeah, and heavy zone coverage, which again we saw that last year with the Giants alone. And here, this is the one and only Tay Crowder hype session that he's going to get from me. Is he played over 1,000 snaps and he still had a tackle rate of nearly 12%. So he was actually decently efficient when it comes to that, a low missed tackle rate. And if our favorite Divine Diablo does step into that role, there's no reason to think that he can't replicate similar production to Tay Crowder, who had nearly 130 tackles last year. Again, just more reason to pay attention as soon as Denzel Perryman, because in some leagues, Diablo probably won't be drafted and he'll be on the waiver wire. And as soon as Perryman starts, week one, it might be week one. We don't know that yet, but there's that snap share will start to switch and people will be all about it. I'm gonna go ahead, Jorge, and get my template ready for waiver wire pickups with Divine Diablo and have that ready to go. And that
have that bold every week. Be the first one if he's not selected.
He'll be selected. People read he shouldn't be in the article, because if anybody's reading the article, they listen to this, they know full well where we stand on everything.
All right.
So I get the pleasure of the New Orleans Saints, which I'll tell you, before this exercise, I thought New Orleans, I don't think I gave them enough credit and enough props for being just as good as they were last year. They really had, you look at some stretches, a pretty credible defense to start off and a building block for this new some trend for dual defensive coordinator roles, which is just, strange. Dennis Allen is now the head coach. Chris Richard and Ryan Nielsen come over as co-defensive coordinators. Don't know how that works. They replaced Dennis Allen. I say Dennis Allen's head coach. I'm sorry. They are coming in, not worried about Dennis Allen, Chris Richard and Ryan Nielsen. And Dennis Allen was the defensive coordinator since 2015, but Nielsen has been a defensive line coach since 2017, and Chris Richard has been a defensive backs coach for Seattle from 2010 to 14, the Seattle defensive coordinator from 15 to 18, and a defensive backs coach for New Orleans in back last year. So he's got, plenty of experience stepping in. If you look at New Orleans secondary as a whole, and I think that's the area that if there's going to be a focus on outside of I have Marcus Davenport hype, and I don't think nothing's changing schematically that's going to make me feel as good about Davenport or changing my opinion on him going forward. But here's a name that could be interesting, especially if you have corner leagues, is Paulson Adebo. They're from a growth perspective. He improved as the season progressed. They believe, according to all the beat writers and reports, again, this isn't me watching the Saints and breaking this down. Don't want to fool you. And sorry if everybody had thought that I did the scouting work for Paulson Adebo, but I didn't. But I do listen to people that do. And I think that he could have a very significant role. And from a corner's perspective, when you look at Marshawn Lattimore on the other side and you think you get your choice, if you're a quarterback, which direction are you going to go? Probably opposite Lattimore, even though he was heavily targeted last year. I think there's a case for quarterbacks. I'm probably going to move Adebo up just a little bit. Did you know last year so New Orleans had 18 interceptions. 7 of the 9 final opponents they played had under 200 yards passing. Did you guys know that? Show of hands. I did not either.
Nope.
Very interesting little factoid. Fun fact number 2 of the evening, in case you guys keep track. So, I mean, I love Pete Werner. I would love to see that growth again. This isn't about, our hype targets or who we want. This is a scheme change episode, and nothing schematically is changing for me to change evaluation of any of those guys. But Jorge, what about in New York? Because I got to tell you, if there was a name association game and I said Wink Martindale, you would say
pressure.
And
lots and lots of pressure. Don, aka Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator for the Ravens 2018 to 2021. And we just said it, his defensive schemes have always revolved around pressure. Last year, the Ravens ranked 6th in blitz percentage. And what we saw last year was in Baltimore was particularly a lot of defensive back blitzes. Chuck Clark, strong safety for the Baltimore Ravens, had the blitz the 4th most out of all defensive players in Baltimore. And that's kind of impressive considering all the talent that Baltimore has year in and year out and how aggressive they are at getting after everybody. You go to the Giants, I don't think there are more than like 4 people on the Giants roster on defense that had more than 30 blitzes on the season. Like it's really embarrassing, to be honest with you, when you're looking at it. The only one that of note for IDP purposes that we pay attention to is Logan Ryan. He had 31. But that's where I'm kind of excited about one particular player for the Giants. Blake Martinez is still going to be there. He's still going to get his tackles. They drafted Kayvon Thibodeau in the first round this year. You have Azeez Ojulari from last year. These 2 guys are going to be, their core pass rushers there. But somebody who I think is going to get a lot of work this year is Julian Love, taking over the strong safety role from Logan Ryan. All the reports out of OTAs, out of mini camps have been, hey, Julian Love is doing everything we want him to do. He's lining up all over the field. He's applying pressure towards the quarterback. In 2021, he had a tackle rate of 10.8% and a missed tackle rate of 5.7%. So he's getting home. He's getting home wherever he needs to go. And so if he can get close to the type of production in terms of times that he sent against the quarterback like a Logan Ryan was last year, he's somebody who could definitely climb up your DB boards and IDP pretty quickly, man.
Yeah, Logan Ryan was tied for 12th in total pass rush snaps with 35. And so, I mean, with production, and that Wink Martindale is going to put people in a position to succeed. I mean, as we've talked about coverages, like you said, last year with the Ravens, they ran cover 1 nearly 24% of the time and cover 3 almost 30% of the time. So they're gonna put him deep. They're gonna let Julian Love stay in the box. Here's the thing that I read too that's interesting. Keep note of this. Azeez Ojulari might be asked to play more coverage roles this year at Sam than anything. And so this is, again, beat writers talking about that. But for a person who we're looking at just coming off the edge and hopefully making that next step up, there's some people within the organization. Well, there's writers for the organization that have been told that they would like to see Ojulari play a little more coverage. Would that mean anything? Does that translate into anything? I don't know. It's just these little points of context that I like to take into consideration when making my overall evaluations. Mike, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon how the old voice is and how you feel, Tampa didn't do much other than they're doing the dual defensive coordinator role again. Fill us in a little bit about anything going on there.
For me, no real change. I'm targeting who I was normally targeting.
Yep.
So Devin Lloyd, Levante David, maybe Antoine Winfield later on, DB2, DB3. I think Taylor Hall, I think, is going unrecognized in rookie drafts. I think he's someone who could provide some value pretty quick, I think, this year. I mean, his college numbers are really solid, and he's just not getting any type of run. So I think he's someone you could potentially just draft deep, deep, but I don't foresee much. I don't think I see much change with Tampa's defense. Target who you normally are going to target from that defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that everybody, there'll be mix and match of players. We'll see Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's name mentioned in free agent waiver wires when he has the 2-sack game. We'll see that with, Carlton Davis will have the one big corner game that we'll all pay attention to, and Mike Edwards somehow will do Pittsburgh Mike Edwards things where he'll have, an interception, a pick, force fumble, and just do something goofy. And that it was Mike Edwards. I'm getting that right.
We got a question from Sean here. Logan Ryan has been on my roster the last 5 years. Is he worth taking again this year now that he's in Tampa Bay?
I mean, we talked about him, and I think that the question is will he? What's the snaps going to look like this year by comparison? Mike, what do you have projection wise snaps for Logan Ryan? Is it just going to be him stepping in ahead of Mike Edwards? Because right now Mike Edwards is, technically ahead, quote unquote, but I don't know if I buy that.
I got a little over 900.
Okay. Then that tells me he's definitely not behind anybody. He's should be the starter, which I'm just shocked that other places haven't given him the full strong safety role. Jorge, what do you think? Any ideas?
You know what? Whether it's New England, Tennessee, New York, he produces.
Yeah.
I until he doesn't do anything, I will make sure there's a spot on my roster if I have a deep enough bench for Logan Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, yeah, again, I think you can get him so late. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, maybe other people are.
Recency bias is a thing. People like to look at numbers and maybe not look at the whole picture changes there. So
absolutely. Speaking of the whole picture, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, never mind. Go ahead. I'll talk about it another time.
Gotcha. I was going to say, speaking of changes, Seattle. We've talked a lot about Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton. We haven't talked a lot about Clint Hurt. Their new defensive coordinator takes over Ken Norton. He was under Vic Fangio with Chicago. It's already been clued in. Jordan Brooks will wear the green dot, but Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs will be the ones actually playing the calls and variations upon defenses, because under their system, they want the safeties to be the quarterback a la of the defense. But they're transitioning fully to this 3-4. And that's going to be how they evolve into it. And, they're going to mix up safety looks. They want to get Jamal Adams, according to Clint Hurt, they want Jamal Adams to be less recognizable on blitzes. He went from having, obviously, success to a lack thereof when it comes to quarterback, with sacks. And they think that it was just a double team game. Every time that Logan or Jamal Adams was in the box, they knew he was going to be blitzing, and so they doubled him. And that's why his production wasn't as great last year. And so they're hoping to mix and match and actually change that up a little bit and let him come, play in the box and then drop back into a curl or drop back into safe coverage, play the run a little bit more, changing it up to give different offenses a different look and keeping them off kilter. So as high as we already have Jamal Adams, is there room for maybe even more? Yeah, potentially. I think there's a case to be made that maybe those sacks return, and he's already high on our list. He's going to be one of the top 2 or 3 safeties drafted. So it's hard to say I'm hyping him any more than that, but I'm optimistic that maybe the sacks will come back full force, and we'll see another season of Jamal Adams. And last but not least, Jorge, the Pittsburgh Steelers, Terrell Austin comes in. He was replacing Keith Butler. Brian Flores also joins him as linebackers coach. What's new in Pittsburgh?
It's kind of like it wasn't like it is in Houston. It's kind of more of the same. Terrell Austin, he had previous stints as defensive coordinator jobs in Detroit from 2014 and 2017. He was the Bengals DC in 2018. Look, at the end of the day, this is Mike Tomlin's defense. This will always be Mike Tomlin's defense. Nothing's going to change. Um, or maybe it might in a few minutes. We'll talk about this because Nate, you and I were talking about this earlier in the pre-show. TJ Watt's going to be TJ Watt. He's going to do TJ Watt things. I thought it was really interesting that they brought in Larry Ogunjobi to replace Stephen Tuitt, excuse me, who retired this offseason. Again, nose tackle. I'm not really caring about nose tackles and IDP, but there's somebody that came on this year, or they added this offseason that you brought up, DeMonte KZ, who I was reading that he hasn't played over the course of his career less than 75% of snaps on the field. And kind of want to throw it back to you. What is this talk of like a 3 safety look that they're potentially wanting to show with Minka there and Edmonds and KZ? Is that something that is kind of like a smoke screen, or do you think that it's more of like a depth piece?
I think it's a depth, and I think it's versatility based. I think that they realize that Kazee is much better deep. He since 2018, he has 12 interceptions. That's just one less than what Minka Fitzpatrick has over that same span. Better deep. I believe they know that they want Edmonds to be more out of the slot if they can play all 3, because he's much better against the run than the other 2. And when you're in the NFC North, you clearly stopping the run is going to be a priority. And so I feel like I don't think it's not a smoke screen per se, but I think it's just a different look. And that Sean alludes to, that they need 3 safeties because Devin Bush hasn't been panning out. That is paramount this year. They have mentioned numerous times they know what you're going to get within, at least at the middle now, especially with Ogunjobi and Hayward and TJ Watt. But Devin Bush has just been anything short of stellar in the middle, and that extra safety, I think it's more for an added look than anything, but they have to stop the run. They were so atrocious last year in stopping the run as a whole, or lack thereof. They didn't stop anybody. That they've got to change something.
Miles Jack wasn't good at stopping the run either.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's the crazy thing, is that just doesn't seem like the ideal scenario, but maybe they think that let the run beat them again, and they'll do something, and they'll get to the quarterback. I guess I don't know.
Translation: Mike Tomlin likes IDP fantasy football, and he's assembling his roster for us.
Thank you, Mike Tomlin. It's very nice of you. But guys, excellent show. Thank you all for taking part with this. This is such a difficult translation, but I think it's just, again, one little added piece, another little ingredient to the recipe of the delicious IDP soup that we hopefully are making for everybody. But before we go, I do want to say there's a couple bits of news. Unfortunately, obviously, we had the passing of 2 great Baltimore Ravens, Jalen Ferguson, who passed away at the age of 26, and Tony Siragusa, the Goose. Passed away at the age of 55.
You're my restitution, Goose.
I love that Hard
Knocks. I still remember that Hard Knocks. That was freaking hysterical.
He was the best. So they will be missed. Guys, any final words?
I got nothing.
I'd say head over to fantasyandframes.com and read our IDP Dynasty Target articles. We still got those going out there. We had Brandon Jones, Cody Barden. We got Marcus Davenport coming up soon. We got David Long. And then before you know it, after the holiday, 4th of July holiday, which is creeping up, it's like, in a week and a half. It's crazy. All these holidays, every other week, I feel. We're going to be targeting our redraft IDPs to look at this season. So head over there. We got our IDP rankings, both in Dynasty. Hollywood, who couldn't make the show today, has his Dynasty rankings up there now on fantasyandframes.com. And of course, all 3 of us are going to have, Nate, myself, and Hollywood are going to have our IDP redraft rankings up there pretty soon. So head over there and check out all the Dynasty work we got going on over there, as well as all the IDP work.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Jorge. So for Mike, for Jorge, I am Nate. We'll see you next week.
I didn't mean to hurt you. Coach told me to.